Today we're gonna have a working meeting around a great question that came in. I had a good conversation with a federal employee this week. 56 years old, 26 years of service. When can I retire? Situation had been a little rough over the last few years. They'd gone through a divorce, expenses related to kids and family. Financial situation looked like this, about $250,000 in the TSP, some home equity, some savings. That's kind of what the balance sheet looked like. And so the conversation went like this. I'm feeling like now is my opportunity to kind of get things in order, and I want to know what things look like. What are my options going forward? I'd really like to be able to work for 10 more years if I'm able to. Where should I start? When can I retire? I want to take a look at this. I think it's really important to answer these kind of questions, and we know it's not always the right fit to work together on day one, but we want to provide a lot of education and as many resources as possible around questions like this so you can take them and use them within your own situation, create your foundation. And in this case, what we want to do today is create a retirement income and expense worksheet that you can kind of get a picture of what your situation looks like, what this situation looks like, and can they retire in 10 years? Let's go ahead, let's get started. Let's put some numbers on paper. To start out, I just summarized what we just talked about. So this federal employee was 56 years old, 26 years of service, $140,000 salary. We didn't talk about that. $250,000 in the TSP, cash flow currently about 5% going into the Thrift Savings Plan, and there's an additional agency match. So that's kind of what they're able to save and invest on a consistent basis. In these circumstances, where do you get started, right? I mean, it really comes down to creating a picture of what your current financial situation looks like. What we tell people in most cases to do here is pull down your total compensation statement, your summary of benefits, whatever it is that your agency provides. So you can see exactly the benefits tied to your federal employment, right? It's going to show you your income. It's going to show you all the benefits you're enrolled in, the costs of them. It's going to show you projections on your FERS basic annuity, your TSP. So it's a great starting point to see where things related to your federal employment are. You're also going to want to do work outside of that. So creating a complete picture involves pulling all your financial statements together, right? All your assets, your liabilities, so you can create a balance sheet, see where your net worth stands. You want to create an inventory of insurance coverages. You want to look at your tax returns, estate planning documents, all that kind of stuff so that you can really make the best decisions related to your financial plan. You got to know where you stand first, right? And then you can kind of put things in order based on the circumstances that are currently existing in your situation. Outside of that, once you have all that information compiled, really what we want to do and what we're going to talk about here today is we want to create a retirement income and expense worksheet, just some estimates we can work off of, right? And in this circumstance, the family wanted to work for another 10 years. This federal employee said, if I'm able to work for 10 more years, that would be great. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to base our numbers off, see where they currently stand. Current information, first steps first. Let's take a look at that FERS basic annuity. Can we project that into the future? $140,000 current salary. We know there's going to be pay raises over the next 10 years. So in order to do that, to get a great picture of what the FERS annuity might look like, we need to project for those pay raises. I think 3% might be a fair place to start. You know, we don't know exactly how these things are going to turn out, but let's say 140,000 times 3% times 10 years. That's going to give us a salary in 10 years of $188,000. And that's what we're going to base our high three off of. In this circumstance, they've already got great years of service, 26 years. They go another 10, that's 36 years of service. They're over the age of 62. The 1.1% multiplier is going to apply. So it looks like this, 148 times 36 years times 1.1%. Mentioned they got their service. Their FERS basic annuity looks like this. $74,506 per year. So that's a great benefit as a foundational piece. So step one, we know we have an idea of what the FERS basic annuity might look like. Okay, so that's a foundational piece. What we want to do next, we want to take a look at Social Security estimates. Now these are pretty easy to find. If you go to SSA.gov, you can pull down your exact record. You can see what your salary's been over the last however many years you've worked, and it'll give you projections of what your benefits will be at different ages. Okay, so that's the best way to do it. If you don't want to do that in your situation like I'm in currently, I don't have all the information, but I want to be able to give them a projection. So Social Security offers a nice quick calculator. We know this employee is 56 years old, so we can back into where their birth date might be. We'll just use a sample birth date, June 15th, 1968. We know the current earnings, $140,000 for the year. So they're going to do a quick calculation and give us an estimate based on that information. Future retirement date options. So this part right here, we're going to say we're going to retire in 10 years. That was the goal. So 2034, and we're going to lay it out in June when they turn, I guess they'll be 66 at that point, right? And on the bottom here, we're gonna choose to see the benefit in future dollars. So it's inflated. Social Security gives you a projection based on what they think inflation might be. We submit the request and we can see the retirement estimate for Social Security at 66 in 10 years would be $42.38 per month. So what we wanna do, we wanna go back to our worksheet, our simplistic worksheet here. Got our FERS up here. We're gonna add Social Security. And we're gonna say that $42.38 a month, that comes out to be $50,856 per year. Really foundational pieces, we can see already that those both sound like they're gonna be significant. Of course, it is at age 66, so you worked long and hard for both of these benefits. Okay, next part of the puzzle. What's the next piece? Right, it's gonna be the TSP, it's gonna be IRA accounts, it's gonna be investments, it's gonna be real estate income, whatever it is that you have to supplement these fixed income sources. So in this case, we know there's $250,000 in a TSP. They're contributing 5% to it, roughly 5% plus the agency match. So we wanna back into what that might look like in 10 years. And a big part of this discussion, of course, is gonna be around cash flow. Like, can they contribute more? Do they need to contribute more over the next 10 years? Because the extra dollars count, right? The more dollars you're saving and investing are just gonna work in your favor down the road in the future, give you more options and all that kind of good stuff. So let's take a look at it. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna say $250,000, we're gonna make 7% a year, reasonable rate of return, at least for this example anyway. And we're gonna say that 10-year time horizon. What does that come out to be with monthly contributions of about $1,000 a month? We're just gonna ballpark this at $1,000 a month. I know that's not exact based on their situation, but let's see where that gives us pretty close. So that comes out to be $676,510, okay? So you're talking about $676,510 in a TSP account that can generate income for you. How much can you take from that? We know there's different rules out there, a 4 or a 5% safe withdrawal rate. Let's use 5% in this circumstance. 676 times 510, $676,510. You take 5% off of that. That's going to give you another $33,825 per year in income. Okay, so that's kind of what we're working with there. So we got our three pieces, right? So we got our Social Security and then our investment income down here on the bottom, coupled with our FERS at the top. So those are the three pieces of income we're working with. Next part, is this going to be enough? And one other thing I do want to touch on here, right? So we talked about cash flow. So let's say they're able to really find a good chunk of money to invest on a consistent basis over the next 10 years. How big of an impact does that make? So if they're able to save $25,000 a year between employee contributions and the agency match, how does that change this equation? So that's $2,083 a month, 10 years, 7%. So we're gonna use all the same things. That's actually gonna come out to be $865,054, right? That you would base then a 5% distribution off of. It's actually about a $10,000 raise. It comes out to be $43,252. So that's the difference there if they're able to kind of create that extra cash flow to then go ahead and save and invest. Let's go ahead and compile this, see what it looks like. On the next page, I've actually added everything up here. So we got our $74,000 from FERS, we got our $50,000 from Social Security. These are really foundational pieces, great fixed income benefits. And then the TSP income that's coming out at a 5% distribution. All total up gives us $159,187 a year. So that to me sounds like a really nice amount of income coming in on a consistent basis, especially with those two fixed income sources. We love to see that. So, and of course, like we said, long career, well-deserved. So the next part of this, will this income be enough, right? So we need to estimate what your expenses will be in retirement. Rule of thumb out there, we know generally most people are going to spend 80 to 100% of what they currently spend in retirement. Okay, not what you make, but of what you spend. And the reason for that is certain expenses drop off, of course, taxes and some other items that you won't spend money on anymore, but you pick other things up. So they just kind of fill in those gaps, right? The spending stays pretty consistent. So we can base our retirement projections on that. In this case, we can back into it because we know they haven't been able to save much. So much of what they're making is going back out towards expenses. So if we say they make $140,000, we're saving 5% of it, some things will drop off. So let's go ahead and estimate it at 80% of that $140,000 is what they're going to need in retirement to spend on a consistent basis. So $140,000 times 80% equals $112,000. And on a monthly basis, that comes out to be, let's call it $9,300 a month. So that's what we're looking for from our retirement income. Now we know what we have coming in, $159,000, that's projected in 10 years, but this $112,000 needs to be adjusted for inflation because we know cost of living, things have gotten expensive. So let's project this. Let's use the same 3% number. I know the Fed wants to get down to 2%. It doesn't seem very realistic to me. It's been persistent. It's been sticky. It could even be more than 3% over the next 10 years, but let's base our calculations on that. So 112 times 3% times 10 years. That number is going to inflate up to over $150,000 a year. So $519, that's what $112,000 becomes in 10 years. So we can see we're looking good from a retirement income estimate based on what those retirement expense estimates come in at, all right? This looks good for this person. Of course, it's 10 years out. Things have to go well. They have to be able to continue to work. They have to keep contributing to the TSP, etc., keep accumulating within their Social Security benefits. But things, by all accounts, look good. Now, there's a lot of other variables we're going to want to consider. As I mentioned, this is a really simplistic calculation that we can ballpark things, and it's a great way to create momentum and get a foundation. And I hope you'll use this if you kind of need to get started working on your estimates for income and expenses. So some important things to consider, right? Cash flow is very important, as we mentioned. If you're able to save and invest more, that's going to benefit you in the future. But also how you invest, how you allocate your money is also important. You can be too aggressive. You can also be too conservative. So you need to be invested properly over the time frame that you have ahead of you to be able to meet your financial goals. That's very important. All right, and then don't forget about all the other financial planning that goes into this, right? It's not just federal benefits. There's a lot of other things that we need to be looking at and considering, including your tax planning strategy for the future, including estate planning, insurance, all that kind of stuff to protect your family. And there's just a lot more that goes into creating a great financial plan. So consider all of that alongside of this foundational piece, creating your retirement income and expense worksheet. As I mentioned earlier, trying to share as much information, provide as much value as we can for people out there. Do that as part of our mission here in financial services. So if you could like, subscribe, and please share with any friends or colleagues that you think might find this interesting, that could use this information within their financial plan. And until next time.